good day, good evening, Happy New Year. I hope all of you had a very peaceful, restful holiday season full of joy, love, peace, and warmth with your loved ones. I had a very interesting holiday season. A friend of many years came and visited, and that was very nice. For the majority of the holiday season, my mother was on her best behavior. But like all good things, they just don't last. So unfortunately, after we brought in the new year, she had a terrible meltdown that not only affected me, but affected our neighbor who had selflessly been there for my mother for more than a year and a half, day in and day out. And I don't know what we would have done without her being there. My mother somehow got it in her head that the neighbor was paid help, which was not the case. The neighbor came over to help just because she's a warm, decent human being. She was trying to be a good neighbor, and maybe just part of her Christian upbringing, being charitable. She and my mother are the same age. This woman has had several bouts with COVID, hip replacement, eye surgery, and through it all, she still managed to keep plugging away and coming to help. I would like to note that even if you have hired help, everyone should be treated with respect, decency, and the way if you were in that position, you yourself would wish to be treated. My mother claims that she always does that, but that's not the case, unfortunately. To know her is to know that she does not treat people honestly in the way that she would wish to be treated. Because no one would wish to sit before a judge and jury with no right to appeal, no right to be actually heard. Whatever the judge feels that particular day is law, and their law is governed by God Himself. And so, to object or to raise question or doubt in their analysis of something is to pretty much question God Himself. Those of us who have been on this earth for quite some time understand that's not the case, and clearly understand the type of manipulation that is occurring when you try to link your beliefs, your actions, to those of whatever force you believe in, be it God, be it whoever, whatever your spiritual beliefs are. Whenever you link your actions to them, that's a form of manipulation. And I believe in most religions, it is not well seen in the eyes, whoever you believe in either. But I digress. Once she got it in her head that the neighbor was hired help, she began to almost immediately treat the woman as if the woman was there to serve her. Yes, yes, get me that, get me the other, get me. Now, don't get me wrong. She is a very bossy person anyway. And as I've stated in other videos, her husband, who was her late husband, who was a jellyfish, allowed himself to be disrespected and to be treated inhumane, which then formed in her mind that this was the proper way to treat people. It would always result in her getting what she wants. And so she spent decades under this thought process, only to lose him, to have an adult child that will not be spoken to in any type of way, and to basically face resistance. And mind you, the neighbor didn't argue with her. She just basically quietly did what she could to help. Even when my mother was less than nice, even when my mother was bossy, even when my mother said things in a way that many people of privilege would say things, where it's understood. The help should essentially know. It's understood. I shouldn't have to explain everything. And, it must be fortunate to live in a world where you don't have to explain yourself, where you say it and it's understood. But I'm a mere mortal, and in the world I live in, you kind of have to give people guidance. They're not expected to read your mind. When you want things, you have to be clear about what you want and explain your wants clearly. So, the last time that the neighbor came over, to make my mother happy, my mother had requested a few dishes that she wanted for the new year. So I made black eyed peas, pig's feet, and greens. Because my mother previously has accused me of trying to poison her, I make it a point that any food I bring over, I get a spoon or a fork and I eat out of the same dish. I think what maybe angered her even more is that in the dish that I brought over, there was more than enough food to give my mother for that evening and more, to eat some myself, and to give the neighbor the remainder to take home for herself and her husband. By doing that, I also removed any realm of possibility that she could claim that the food caused uneasiness to her stomach. Or there was somehow, and I should change that. I shouldn't say uneasiness to her stomach, because how we each react to different foods may change. So it's possible that something could cause uneasiness to her stomach without it being poisonous. But she would not be able to claim that there was something that was poisonous or malintentioned in the food. So immediately, once I shared the food with the neighbor, she became incensed and said, "Ugh, the neighbor should have been your mother. I know you wish that she was your mother." The neighbor tried to proceed like, she didn't hear it. And my mother repeated it several times. And I didn't engage either. We just both sort of continued on. I proceeded to simply ask, was there anything else I could do, anything else she needed to make her evening more comfortable so that I could get out of there, because my new way of coping is to try to de-escalate, and I immediately disengaged. So I disengaged. The neighbor left. I left. And it was probably a day or two later when I called to see if she needed anything, because it was a day where I was not going to be going over there because her aide was going to be there. But I was calling to check in to see, was there anything else that she needed? Did she want me to order anything? And she proceeded to go into another monologue of how the neighbor was being paid, how my mere suggesting that the neighbor wasn't being paid was a reflection on how I felt about her as a mother, on her intelligence, that for me to even suggest that the neighbor wasn't being paid was an insult on her intelligence. Now, mind you, we review the statements every month, so she knows exactly what's going out, what's coming in, what's being paid. And there has never been any sort of withdrawal. The only thing that goes out are for her supplies, bills, no cash, in other words, is removed. From the accounts. Everything goes out in the form of some sort of bill transaction, which is easily monitored. So there's no ambiguity, excuse me. There's no ambiguity. There's no, okay, well, this amount of cash was withdrawn. And so what was that cash used for? And so you have to sort of rely on someone. No. Everything is through transactions to vendors. So you can clearly see what vendor is being paid and for what reason. So throughout the entire year and a half, there's nothing for the neighbor. Now, mind you, there's another neighbor who brings her, of course she's being paid to do so, but she brings her Christian Brothers brandy. She loves that neighbor. This neighbor, and I'm not complaining about the frequency or lack thereof of her visits, because again, she's the same age as my mother as well. But she comes over periodically, and I think the only difference between the two is that whatever my mother says, she'll say yeah, too. Whereas the other neighbor doesn't engage. She's not saying yay or nay. She's simply not going to engage in the madness. But she loves the one who brings her Christian Brothers brandy and comes over less frequently. And I was telling my therapist, I'm not going to try to dissect or get into the madness of why it is so important for her to not give someone who does something without being paid consistently of their own volition credit. Why is it that clashes in her so strongly that she can't accept that? There must be something nefarious. There must be something where someone's being paid. I don't understand it. And to be honest, I'm not going to try to dissect that and understand it. I'm just going to go off of the behavior and the results of that behavior. And so I told her that if she continued in that realm, if she felt that way, that I would, ask the neighbor to stop coming. I am not going to be a part of abuse of other people. She's my mother, and I have to deal with her. Other people don't shoulder that responsibility. It's not their weight to carry, and I will not be part in subjecting them to any sort of abuse, disrespect, or mistreatment. So I thanked the neighbor for all that she did. I explained the situation. and explained how, it was becoming a very toxic environment. And I didn't think it would be healthy for her to continue to help in this new year. And I think she got it. I think that even though she did not acknowledge Mother's saying that I wished that she was my mother several times, I think she could feel the toxicity. I think so much so that my mother had asked me to order a little small token of appreciation for both neighbors for the holidays. For the neighbor to the left, or right, depending upon whether you're facing the house or looking out from the house, but let's just say looking out from the house, neighbor to the right, I forgot to include the little card where it stated who the gift was from. So once that neighbor received the gift, she called and said that she'd gotten something, and so my mother was like, oh, my mother explained the situation. Of course, my mother made a big to-do of it with me because, the earth came to an end. The other neighbor, the one that was coming over more frequently, and she cannot seem to understand that that woman was just doing it out of kindness. She sent us a group text message thanking my mother. My mother claimed that she didn't see it. I know my mother's not very tech savvy. So when I went over, I showed my mother. My mother was still highly upset that the neighbor hadn't personally told her or called her. In any event, the neighbor, I guess, could feel the bad vibes. So she sent the gift back to my mother. My mother complained to the other neighbor about this. And as she has a tendency to do, told the neighbor that I didn't want her to speak to the other neighbor, woman to woman. And the woman came to her house previously all the time. So how would I prevent them from having a discussion? She had all the time in the world to discuss this with the woman. She chose not to. But that's just another example of how she will throw in an out-and-out lie to a situation. It's sad that she is causing people to remove themselves from her life because other people don't have that same contract with the person as someone that you are in a relationship with or married to or even maybe have raised. And there is still a difference between, I'll say, the contract that you have with somebody that you raised and a partner who has chosen to be in your life. And I've tried on many occasions to gently explain to her that we're not laying with her. We have not entered into this sort of contract. And people that lay with you, they may tolerate things as you may tolerate things with them that other people will not. There's an intimacy there that you don't share with other people. And even then, they're not expected to be mind readers, but there's a closeness where you sort of understand a person on a level, or begin to, depending upon how long you've been together, on a level that other people aren't privy. So, it's a shame for her that she is making her world smaller and smaller. But I think to a certain extent, she is comfortable with that. Because she once stated that she was only surrounded herself really with people that, she would deem, say, sketchy. And I never understood that. And I've discussed this before. But she feels most comfortable just being surrounded by the sketchy. Well, anyway, thank you. And till the next video broadcast. Have a good day. Have a good evening.